I didn't actually realize I hit the wrong button. I had that completely wrong at first. That was my fault. I've never actually done this, so but my name is Adam McDuffie. If you're already on the page, you might or might not have been following me. And I just figured, since it's a wonderful weekend, I would get on and do some reading. And we're going to see how that goes. There's a little spot where I can see comments. I don't know how to actually see if anyone's online, and I don't know if anyone is online, so. But, so I guess I'll get to it, but I'm going to read a few selections from Acolyte. It's a collection of poems and short stories that I just put out earlier this year, not all that long ago. But actually, no, it was the very beginning of the year. It was the beginning of the year that I put this out. January, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to read a few things from Acolyte, and if it's goes a little long or whatnot, or if it's not going long enough, I might read from Without the Light, Volume 1. Now, this I put out in 2018. And so, yeah, I guess. But I will... oh, I have a little eyeball there, so I guess somebody is watching, so that's great. Oh, but so I'm just going to read a few things. I'm just going to grab one that I really like, actually. And this was actually written at the end of last year. This is a poem, and it's Moment in the Air. Hopefully I'm speaking loud enough. If I'm not, that's I'll just have to adjust it. So this is Moment in the Air. I actually wrote this in November 2019. I was actually in an airport at the time. Sitting on an airplane next to a man who snores like a zipper being dragged back and forth. Staring out a window at a rising sun, listening to the little girl a few rows ahead tell a flight attendant about her border collie she got for Christmas. It's the little girl's first flight. She's flying to LA with her grandparents to go visit her mom. But what's most important is the border collie. You see, Christmas is the dog's birthday, so that makes Christmas special. The little girl doesn't mention gifts that she wants for Christmas. No, she talks about what her dog will get on its birthday. Treats, a rope toy, a squeaky squirrel stuffed toy, and much more. I still can't remember what she said the dog's name was. I can't remember the girl's name or what my seat number was, but I remember that Christmas was special because it was the border collie's birthday. It was actually a really fun thing to write, and sometimes that's sometimes that's all it has to be, is it's fun to write and it's something fun to remember. I keep seeing this little eyeball in the corner light up and go away, and I'm not sure if that means I have a watcher or someone's just scrolling by. I haven't a clue. So this is an untitled poem I wrote June 2019. High-flung stars the same as ours, just distance separates. Ether-bound we have found, illusion it creates. For we are the same, or we could claim, stardust invigorates. All life you find of similar kind, yet still endless debates. Did a hand make a plan, will we know in our span of spirit incarnates? Or shall we go into the stars, bringing all our earthly wars? Our custom obviates. That might be our ending, a dismantled sending, as our history indicates. Or shall we go further, pressed on by our fervor, and enlightenment initiates? So I'm going to completely skip past the next poem because it is really long. It's really long. And not exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I like it. I really like it. It's just a matter of audience. The audience, the right audience. You have to have the right audience for everything, right? I am wearing today a Wildcliff t-shirt. Just a quick break in what I'm doing. Wildcliff, it's an amazing band. If you're unfamiliar with their music, go ahead, look them up. They have a page on Facebook, and it's just absolutely wonderful. So yeah, gotta rock the merch. Wildcliff, great band, and highly recommend you check them out. I'm just gonna keep going. I might be reading just to myself, and I have no idea. I'm gonna come back to that last poem that I just saw, and oof. I have long stuff in here, so much long stuff. And it's not really a big thing, so it's actually, I have a few really long things, but I liked them all. So this is an untitled poem. I wrote it around 2012, I think. And I originally published it in my first novel I put out, Goblin by Choice, in 2014. So I'm just read it to you. A giant slept on the cliffs. He dreamed of being small. No dream so odd for giant men than to be nothing at all. He dreamt of all their singing choirs as their melody did fall. The giant became a man, his fist a clenched ball. He fought for hours unrecorded, climbed up the ivy-grown wall, until the man was a giant again, to dream of his folly of wishing to be small. Some of these are old, and some are new, and some I just really like, and I think that's the best way to go about writing anything. Write something you really like. I've done a lot of rambling on here so far already, so that's good, right? January evening, written 2020. Be it best we speak no words, recall or recollect, recant or take back. Does it matter tomorrow? When snow and sky part, when water freezes or recedes, be it best we speak no words, through drought or disease, on this continent or beyond the seas. Does it matter today? When we forgot what we said anyway, when we forget the meaning of our words, or the power that can come from what is heard, be it best we speak no words. Oh my goodness. So, I'm going to figure out, okay. I'm going to go to Everlasting. It was written in 2019. Everlasting, the immortal life, feeling singular in time, no end in sight. What life so grand can last forever? A world so small to them would be, all corners explored at length, yet still questions would remain. What life can last forever? Is there more yet to see? No life can last forever. And yet there is more to see, for immortal is mortal still, an end is somewhere out of sight. We are never singular, though sometimes it feels that way. So, yeah, this is Acolyte that I've been reading from. Just a collection of short stories and poems. I haven't read the entire contents to you, obviously. There's more in here, and there's some longer things, and there's actually it contains a couple of things, but it has selections from Without the Light, Volume 1, Penance and Toil, and it has selections from Goblin by Choice, A Brief History and Thoughts of an Addict and Sorcerer. It contains the entirety of Fish Heads and Bad Acid, and it also it contains a short story, which is quite I don't know the best way to put it, but well, it contains an unfinished short story I wrote in 2009. It ends quite abruptly. It's called Poison and Candlelight, and it'd be horrible to read that to anyone right now because it would just end, and it's unfinished and it's unedited properly, and I'm going to read it anyway. Because that's what you do, right? So Poison and Candlelight, an unfinished short story written, it's an unfinished story written in 2009. The Open. Once upon a time, there was a magic kingdom of wonder and happy endings. The people had no worries, and the kind king ruled over the land with a gentle touch. Too bad that this story happens far beyond that place. This tale occurs in the most frightful of places, in a dark and near-abandoned castle that is wrapped in poisonous vines with crumbling walls to guard its past. Menacing gargoyles peer from the edges of desolate towers and battlements. The doors have rotted into stark frames of scant iron and diseased planks of knotty wood. A barren, moss-covered village sits at the base of a massive hill where the castle once stood strong. A pestilent brown sludge festers in an ancient and useless moat. More a trench now than anything useful, its bridge in shabby condition. One would believe that the hamlet and its grand ancient fortress were uninhabited. Whatever glory once clung to this decayed settlement of a greater kingdom was gone, yet it was not altogether abandoned. Small and darting shapes cavort in its ruined splendor. They are smaller than man, some so dainty that they escape vision as much more than large bugs. One might assume they are without malice or devious nature, their fast movements indicating a shy fear. However, that would be a fool's assumption. They are not innocent creatures. Do not mistake their supposedly shy nature for anything less than plotting, vicious intent. The village is inhabited. Oh, yes, it is. 3 kinds of inhuman, slinking forms call the village home. The first hides well in all places, being possessed by a kinship with shadow. They seem to melt into whatever crack or crevice can provide even the most fleeting darkness. With skin the color of cobblestone and eyes like candle flame, their bodies are no larger than a small child with emaciated bony limbs. A sunken stomach and tightly bound flesh make their waists seem corpse-like. Needle-like teeth fill their wide, grisly mouths. Long pointed ears sag uselessly from their head and have all the charm of oversized feline adornments. Wispy wires of hair populate so little of the back of their skull, in the way an elderly man's might be. Many of them wear only patchworks of leather and suede stitched in a heavy-handed manner. Breeches are the standard for pants, riding no lower than the knee. Their feet slender and bony, just like their other limbs, cracked and crude hands, armed with jagged, untended nails, serve as their primary weapon. The fingers bending in 5 points and the palms wide, with hammer-like leverage. They are like deadly apparitions whose insatiable hunger causes the death of any small animal in their reach. The very whisper of their name amongst humans causes shock, white dread. Minerkin. I don't actually know how to pronounce that word, and I created it. Minekrin. Known all too well as kidnappers and devourers of the newborn. For such reasons, they were hunted desperately and forced far from human towns. Minekrin found a sanctuary in the empty houses here. The second creature hides amongst the moss and vine leaves. Tiny things that can fit in teacups. not one in the same shade of flower tint or forest foliage. Flimsy, translucent wings adorn their backs, a mild, mothy powder flaking here and there. They have all the proportions of men or women of normal size, and in truth are deceptive in that similarity. Archaic and arcane, they dress in garments of centuries past and hold a faith so ancient that no human can understand its purpose. Oftentimes they travel in groups, those small collectives being their closest family. There women take on multiple husbands and choose only the best amongst them as their stud. This being the case, the males engage in competitive sport and feats to prove how worth they are. That's a horrible typo. How worth they are. Sometimes the sport is to win a place in a lady's hand. Other times they fight over the rights of lineage. The games are rarely simple and occasionally deadly. Though little can be said of them as a whole, they share one thing. All except the moniker of Dreyfine, an odd aberration of the words tree vine. Broken down and no longer able to live without protection, they came to the village for strength and numbers. One cannot blame them for understanding the strategic advantage of living amongst so many creatures with buildings to hide amongst. The third creature is usually only seen at night, hiding under the dirt and amongst the decrepit structures during the day. I have to edit this. This is terrible. They carry small lanterns so they may see, for their eyes are nearly blind at night. Sadly, though, they would turn to salt and ash if they walked freely in the sun's rays. A light blue tint gives color to their flesh, and their hair is an obtuse navy hue. Of slouched backs, they stand but shoulder height to an adolescent woman. Short-legged and long-armed, they seem of ill make. Commonly, they have a healthy bubble of fat around their belly and strong, sturdy arms. The women are modest, covering most of their body in thick fabric and a hood around their head. However, the men often wear no more than wide-legged trousers. Short-faced, with small ears, they look about with an elongated neck to prop up their head. More revered for a keen sense of smell than anything else. Most senses have grown dull, but they can seek you out with but a sniff of the winds. Having no name you can pronounce easily, Menekrin and Drefan usually refer to them as night lights. It is their diligence and single-edged copper swords that keep the village safe at night. Deep in the castle, though, another thing lurks. It ran the humans that once lived here off to other villages, and some to their graves. A beast which the residents live with as an emperor. His will commands all. As long as his law is never disobeyed, the creatures need never fear. Only one person ever sees him, but his blood-chilling howls keep the residents aware. The Emperor Nockborn only will see his personally chosen magistrate. Every time a magistrate dies, the Emperor sends a sign to the village of who his new envoy shall be. Council of Elders interpret the signs the Emperor has sent forward and tell the denizens the new magistrate shall be. For now, a magistrate long in his years still serves the Emperor. His name is Christabel. A Drefine of tiny size, even for his own kind, his presence is treated with the most dire respect. His color faded long ago, leaving his body the tones of winter white and ice blue. As magistrate, his word is law, but none speak to Nockborn. For none speak to Nockborn but him. For 76 years Christabel was feared by all in the village, but it is known by the elders that soon Christabel shall die. Soon the village of Dorshafomar. I am terrible with names, and I should not be allowed to make these. I don't even know how to pronounce what I wrote. Dorshafomar would need a new magistrate, and some helpless creature would be forced to enter the castle. Some magistrates died on the first day they met Emperor Nockborn. Whether it was from the fright or his disappointment was uncertain, but nonetheless it had happened in the past. Necrin, Drefine, and Nightlight all feared the duty in their own right. Few wished the burden of serving the Emperor directly. Yet when Christabel in his ragged age passed on, one unlucky sod would be chosen to replace him. Eventually, I really should consider finishing this. Urn broke. I didn't do it. In the falling thatching of a stone and mud brick house near the wooded edge of Dorshafomar, A small twig-built apartment sits. The dwelling is built in several tiers with tree bark and pilfered housewares to form its roof. A door cobbled from sap-hardened leaves and acorn chips rests on its lowest tier. The juice of blueberries and currants give the windows a purple tone to their shutters. A thread woven of spider's milk stretches out 1/2 meter from the far corner, attaching to a twig pole of birchwood. Various minuscule garments drying in the summer air. A hodgepodge lawn of moss surrounds the outer edge of the building, and various small flowers grown along its rim. Smoke pipes out of an earthen chimney fashioned from various types of baked clay stacked on top of another, reaching upward from the center of the home. On the end of an odd copper chain staked into the moss, a yellow cricket walks back and forth, keeping watch over the property, his leaps controlled by the restraint of his yoke. Near the door, a tiny bucket made of cork rests with a long branch mop sticking in its fetid water. The chirp song of the domesticated cricket is drowned out, though. Another, more grating noise fills the air. In the recesses of the house, 2 female voices ring out the angry sound of instigated troubles. In the central room of the house, past the foyer and beyond parlor and a quaint kitchen, next to the shattered remnants of a shattered urn, 2 female Drefine are face to face in argument. Sisters only 2 years difference, they alone are left to keep the family strong. Neither one has consented yet to marriage, both being picky and strong-willed. The older sister, acting as matriarch to the falling line. Her hair was like cherry blossoms, and her skin a subtle rose tint. Though smaller than her younger sister, she was stiff of arm. A wrap dress of white florals and an apron of rat skin were her clothes, with a gilded headband to push back her hair. She had eyes like white fire, and a subtle gloss of juniper on her lips. Her sister was lean and tall, with wheat hair and equally rose skin. A blackbird's feathers formed a corset, and olive-colored fabric extended out into wide sleeves and a layered skirt of knee length. Her hair was unfettered by scarves or bands, and bounced freely with thick curls and tresses. "The urn broke by itself?" the older, smaller girl asked with venom. "The urn broke before I came in," the younger, taller sister replied, crossing her arms. "Really? It just broke on its own accord, did it?" the older girl asked sarcastically. "Don't know. Ask the urn. Urn broke, and I didn't do it," the younger girl said flippantly. "Maybe Chickadee did it. Why don't we ask the little cricket? Or maybe Edict did it." "Where's the boy? We could ask him," the older girl spit back. "Leave Edict out of this, Maisie. We don't know our brother ain't that much of an idiot." The younger girl fired back. Maisie put her hands on her hips and looked down at the shattered urn. It had been in the family for 3 generations now, and she was furious. Her wings were twitching with irritation. "Beatrice, you stupid little brat, just fess up," Maisie shouted, pointing a finger at her sister. Beatrice scowled her lovely face into a horrid, spoiled pucker and shot her wings up. "Urn broke, but I didn't do it. I ain't a fool." Bea was so frustrated she really hadn't broken the urn, and Edict was playing by the giant sundial in the middle of the village. There was no way he broke it when he was so far away from home. "Well, you had to have broke it. No one else is here. And if you say ain't one more time, I'll bust your lip," Maisie said, holding up a clenched fist. Beatrice shot her wings down, put her arms at her sides with little shaking hands. "Maybe a bogey did it, 'cause I didn't do it," Bea screamed, leaning towards her sister and closing her eyes. "Bogey? There ain't any in Wow, I can't read my own writing. "There aren't any in Dorchafomar," Maisie exclaimed with fury. Beatrice was fed up with the line of questioning, and she turned and stormed out of the room, throwing her hands in the air. "Get back here and clean this mat, you idiot, flutter by!" Maisie screeched at her at the front door, slammed closed. Bea wasn't going to take any more of it right now. She spread her wings and flew off the thatch roof towards the woods. It wasn't advised that Drefine go too far from the village, but the edge of the woods was safe. She drifted down towards a crop of buttercups and dandelions, exasperated from her sister's complaining. She knew she hadn't broken the stupid urn, and she didn't know why it mattered so much. It's just a stupid urn. They had dozens. Their mother had left tons of junk in the house for them. They only used the big urn for Spring Festival, and it didn't even get filled with anything other than flowers. Bee was flustered, but a jaunt in the outer rim of the wood would cheer her up. A squirrel eyed at her from a nearby tree. The little woodland creatures were usually afraid of the village folk, but sometimes they got close enough for some fun. Bee eyed it back and pulled a long, round-bladed bone knife out of her corset. The squirrel came any closer, she could bring a gift back to Meiji to quiet her mouth. Little black eyes inspected the winged sprite, and slowly it moved closer. She poised herself in the most still position she could, trying to bait it. Any movement would scare it off before it got close enough. Its little head bobbed, and it crawled closer. Just as it moved a little closer, she jumped towards it and punched the blade into its neck. A violent spasm, and it fell to the ground. Quick and easy, she pulled the knife out and wiped it on the grass. "Stupid squirrel," she laughed. She grabbed its tail and started to drag it along the ground. It was heavier than she thought. Where was Edic when she needed him? There was no way in a prince's heart she could fly it up to the house alone. She dragged like mad to bring it to the bottom of the thatched roof, but now she had to carry it up to the roof. "May, can you help me? Meiji?" she called up. She couldn't leave it here alone. A Minercan might steal it. "May!" she yelled louder. No answer. She probably was brooding in the kitchen. Bee tried to fly and carry it, but she couldn't get more than a meter off the ground. She was going to have to give up soon. She tried again, but fell down with a thud on the top of the dead squirrel. "Need a hand, little one?" A skulking voice asked from the old arch where the door once stood in the house. She froze in place and reached towards her knife. If the beastly shadow hat wanted her squirrel, she would fight for it. The withered form of Minercan secreted out from the shadows, his nasty hands rubbing together as he leaned down to talk to her. "Oh, Balderdash, you scared the whippets out of me," she said with a sigh. Balderdash had long been a friend of her family, and he was one of the few Minercan she trusted. "Sorry, Bee. It is in my nature," he said with a toothy grin. "I thought you was a thieving shadow hat come to make off with my squirrel. I would have spiked you good, too." She dusted off her dress, and he scooped her and the squirrel up in his hands and winked. "I am a thieving shadow hat, Bee. But I wouldn't be a jacker and skeef what you rightfully earned," he said with a smile. He lifted her up as far as he could, and she tried to fly the rest of the way with the squirrel in tow. It was easier to make the distance when she only had to go more than halfway. Landing on the roof, she buzzed over the edge and waved down at Balderdash. "Thank you, kind sir." She curtsied as boldly as she could, so that he saw the gesture. "You are welcome, fine lady," he said with a bow. If he were a wee bit smaller, she would take him as a suitor, but as things were, it would be a breach of etiquette. She turned to drag the squirrel over to the house and saw her sister at the front door. She didn't look very happy, but then again, she wasn't. Always trying to act like a lady of authority, Bee didn't give two figs if she was older than her. "Who was that you were talking to?" Meiji asked, walking over to lend a hand. "Balderdash. You gave me a hand when you didn't hear me calling," Bee said in a snotty way. "Well, at least he has character," May said as they pulled the squirrel closer to the apartment. "I'm sorry about storming off, but I didn't break the urn," Bee said as they dropped the squirrel next to the mossy lawn. "It's okay, Bee. I found the culprit. A beetle got in the pantry. I had to beat him into mash," Meiji said, giving her sister a half hug. "Gonna need some traps, then," Bee replied as she wiped some hairs off her dress. "That we will. I'll gut if you cook," May said with a smile. "Good. I hate cleaning them out," Beatrice said, cracking her knuckles. I think I'm gonna stop there. This would actually be good if I was to finish it. There's actually not that many pages, so that was most of the beginning of Poison and Candlelight. which I have in Acolyte. So. I'm actually going to take 2 seconds. I have little things I can wave. I don't understand how that works. But, so I have Rhiannon. I can just wave directly at you. I don't have to hit a button to wave. That looks like I have a button to wave at you, but that seems silly. So hi Rhiannon, and hi Heather. Thank you for watching. You are the only ones at the moment. I keep seeing the little eyeball blink, and then there's no one there. So I don't understand what that even means. All right, this is a lot, so I'm only going to read a little. I don't actually know how long I've been reading, so I like that I can see the little icons in the corner, though, and then I can see down here who is watching, and that's really cool. Should give more notice for the next one. But, so I am actually going to read the very beginning bits, and I don't know how long I'm going to read this, but I'm going to read at least some of the beginning of Without the Light, Volume 1. And then, I don't know. I just want to read at least the end of the acknowledgement. As an additional acknowledgement, this smaller size edition only exists so that Maddie can have a tidy bookshelf. You can't have an untidy bookshelf. Of course, as we all know, the original one was huge. Of days forgot and moments half remembered, what can be said? The world in all its complications slogs along with nary a complete thought on meaning or substance. People are on the whole benumbed by their own internal beliefs and thoughts so as to never be fully connected nor disconnected from their fellows. Yet in a primitive way they are aware that life has some greater purpose and meaning, albeit a meaning just beyond their ken. The rational man seeks meaning in the mathematics of the universe, and the theosophists seek meaning in their individual relationship they have with their personal gods. In the past, though, it is said, gods walked amongst men. Centuries have passed since the days of grand adventure and epic heroes, but still their tales linger on. It can be known with some clarity that these mythic days are not strung like beads in an unending thread, but that great expanses fester like chasms wide between each legendary jewel of history. Men might not be meant for such greatness that so few have achieved. This could be a principal reality of the nature of things, but perhaps not. Of days forgot and moments half remembered, what can be said? All things come to an end. Life flickers out. Memories fade. Empires fall. History is lost, and worlds eventually cease to be, but what of time? Perhaps even time must end. Prologue. In New York there is a county called New Amsterdam, and within that county is the town of Overmarsh, an hour north of Fairmount and just to the east of Oswego. There in that town is a village called Middlefield, which is little more than churches and farms. In a particular house within that village is a family just sitting down for dinner. A mother, a father, a little girl clutching a teddy bear, and 2 cats begging beside the table. They are picturesque. They are a picturesque family, happy and without troubles. The father cuts up his daughter's meal, a pot roast and potatoes, for she's too young for the task. The mother sets a small plate of fat meat on the floor for the loyal and curious cats. All the while, just outside the window, a stranger stares in, a voyeur barely visible within shadowy seclusion, his skin a sickly color and his eyes an intolerable cold black. The fields around the house are alive with acres of wheat that dance lightly in a breeze. Even in the darkness, the world is green and vibrant, yet from somewhere unseen, a swirling line of sand blows along with a gentle wind. The voyeur seems aware of the sand. He sinks away from it. The family inside the little house in Middlefield don't see the sand, and they don't see the stranger. The cats inside the house grow alert, and before finishing their meat, they run underneath the little girl's chair. The house becomes darker inside, ever so slightly. The man outside backs away as the sand drifts past him. Even in his cold eyes, there's a twinge of terror. The lights in the house suddenly blink out. A mother screams inside. The sound of cats hissing and fighting can be heard. The voyeur puts a hand over his chest, grasping as if in pain. The moon's rays glisten off what looks like silver on his hands. The clouds move in the sky, and the fields are enshrouded. The stranger vanishes from sight. The sand that was riding the wind slowly blows away and is gone. That same evening, in the city of Fairmount, a couple walk into an Art Deco building, a grand hotel called the Cromwell. They're both dressed well for the evening. Nice black dress with heels, fancy suit, and shined shoes. The man is pudgy and somewhat short, and his face almost glows with happiness. The woman by his side is, some would say, far lovelier than he deserves. She smiles at him as he takes her hand. They're going to dinner at one of the nicest places in the city. It's their anniversary. They had their first date at the Cromwell. As the two share a drink and wait for a table, a band plays on stage. One man is playing the guitars, another plays the piano, and a third man is singing. The couple find their way to be seated in a booth far from the stage, but the music is still audible. The server brings them another set of drinks. The couple do not notice the small bit of sand under their feet. Far from their booth, sitting by the stage, a man is watching them. His eyes are cold and his skin is gray. He drums his fingers on the table and seems to be waiting for something. Another stranger is moving towards the table where the couple sits. He moves like the world around him isn't real. He's shrouded in black, robed in darkness. His face elderly but uncannily full of strength. The couple is unaware of the stranger even though he is standing right beside them now. The power in the hotel goes out without warning. Emergency lights kick on in every hall and within the dining room. Red haze, a specter of illumination, dimly gives sight as the couple shares their last moment together. The man looks on in horror. His wife has fallen to the floor. He rushes to the ground to hold her and can see in her face a pain beyond reckoning. He speaks her name, Daria, and she speaks his for the last time, Zenovi. The room is still bathed in red light as a waiter phones an ambulance. The band has stopped playing. The husband cries out. Both strangers are gone, as is the stand. Sand. There was a T in there suddenly. Far from New Amsterdam, and far from that night, two men sit by a campfire. The ground around them wreathed in snow. Many small lanterns hang from the trees, and a tea kettle steams away on a small, flat stone slab. One man is garbed in animal pelts, and the other in a long, double-breasted blue jacket with dozens of silver buttons. In his right hand he holds a brass clepsydra, a water clock, crafted to look like a coiled serpent with many wings. The man in the furs looks at the clepsydra knowingly, and then looks into the stern green eyes of his companion. Long dark hair is caught by a breeze and moves back and forth in front of his eyes. They speak of things in a tongue not known to many. The words, though, are not happy ones, and something grave weighs heavily on both their hearts. The one man hands the clepsydra to the other and says something. The bulk of what he said was indecipherable, but amongst his words was a name, Eridu, and a phrase in English, the city of mirrors. The man dressed in pelts took the water clock and hid it below his garments, and the other man stood up, and in an instant was gone from sight, as if he had never been there at all. Take a sip before I go on. Part 1. The Man in the Red Suit. A room bare of things normally associated with persons living in a home, save the myriad of beer cans and empty liquor bottles. The only real consistency in the room is the horribly stained, woven hippie-style rug and an overfilled ashtray planted in the carpet. To add some manner of lively activity, the corner of the room is dedicated to a dismal milk crate entertainment center, fully equipped with a beat-up television and all manners of video games and electronic distractions. A sliding glass door peeks out onto a balcony overlooking the pestilence of city life. A sky wrought with more gray than blue and clouds of toxins instead of rain. Beyond the tragedy of the living room, there was a bleak hallway leading down into a kitchen that had all the charm of a prison cafeteria. Two metal folding chairs framed a solemn card table, and a rusty white refrigerator stood like a titan overpowering the room. The sink and cupboards gave the distinct impression of having been built for hunchback dwarves, and the pile of dishes gave a guess as to the tenant's lack of ambitions. Across from the kitchen was a bedroom that seemed more like a vault for clothing to be heaped up like plundered treasures in a dragon's lair. If it wasn't for the glow of a lava lamp, the room would have been rather ominous. Then, at the very end of the hall, stood the bathroom that time forgot. Pinned halfway between a truck stop and a 1950s housing community, it is here where you can see a slowly filling bathtub, and a greed-eyed man staring into his reflection. Shirtless, he appears as thin as a corpse and as pale as death. His skin is covered in neat yet vicious cuts from a delicate razor blade. The bleeding lines have a sad and meticulous nature, each group of them made into strange little drawings and words. A diluted series of smiling faces and self-deprecating statements etched into his weakened body. A pair of ratty dress pants clinging to sweaty, weary legs. A yellow cord tied around his bicep and a sinister needle next to the sink, the only evidence of his self-destructive mission to depart from our reality. A fresh-shaved face and shaggy blonde hair could let him go on amongst us unnoticed, but the burden inside him would always bar away happiness. As soon as the tub was full, he would slide away into nothingness. That was the only plan that made sense to him now. It had been too long since last he felt like life was worth living. The dizzy euphoria had started to fill his veins and his heart was pumping a numb kind of chemical love into his mind. He pulled off his socks and stepped lightly into the tub. The water was so hot but he could barely feel it, and honestly he didn't want to feel it. I just moved my eyes and lost my page. Not page, line. Okay, there we go. The water was so hot, but he could barely feel it, and honestly, he didn't want to feel it. All he wanted to feel was the water filling his lungs as the poison he shot up with took him into dreams of how he wished life could be. He lowered himself down into the water and laid back so he could see the ceiling. There's only silence as his head goes under the water, and he keeps his eyes open to see everything for this last moment. Under the water, there's only the cavernous sound of his own body, moving, and the deep chug of his heart beating along. He would meet his end as he felt he should, alone. Gracious peace started to sneak into his eyes, and slowly the world is disappearing. First the shapes all start to meld into each other, and then the colors pour out into an unformed sea of light. As he loses grip, the light fades into a poor mockery of the darkness. Now there is nothing. The sound has faded. The darkness even seems to have disappeared. Time itself begins to stretch and distort, and he feels almost confused. Isn't there supposed to be some sort of flash before his eyes? Shouldn't he be showing all the moments of his life and some sort of maddening, fleeting glimpse of what was or what he should have seen all along? There was no nostalgia or meaningful last thoughts. Is he dead? Is he now in some sort of purgatory, or is there nothing after the body dies? What little faith he had is questioned, and he wonders if it was really worth it to die, if death holds no more peace than life did. This can't be all there is. An eternity of nothing but his own thoughts. No, it isn't the end yet, because he still feels the nausea of the drugs. There's still some life left in him, but he knows that he can't fight for his life now. He's already too far gone. He doesn't have the strength or control of his body left to crawl out of the tub. He could only try to hold his breath, but then he'd just pass out a little faster. He must still be awake. Sit up. That is all he has to do. He just has to sit up. If you can sit up, then you can lean over the edge of the tub and crawl onto the floor. It's all that he has to do. He just has to tell his body to sit up. All it will take is a little self-control. Mind over matter kind of shit. Sit up and crawl out of the tub. He just keeps screaming it in his head. He needs to live because he knows that this isn't the way to find peace. He has to sit up and crawl out of the tub. Sudden urge to vomit overtakes him. He can feel the pulpy texture in his mouth and the horrible acidic burn in his throat. As he starts to choke out the mess, his eyes shoot open. There it is. He is awake. But where is he? He darts his eyes around, and all he can see is the sick in a shaky white. Is that the tile floor of the bathroom? His face is pressed against the cold tile with a puddle of acidic ichor surrounding his head. He's on the floor, wet, shaking, and violently ill. He doesn't know how he got out of the tub, but he feels some peace in knowing that he is safe now. He feels like well-hammered crap, but he is alive and safe. Of course, feeling alive again doesn't give him the ambition to get off the floor. But instead, he'd rather fall asleep here. After all, he's alive and safe, so it doesn't matter where he sleeps. It could be said that Mondays can be hard, but at least he knew that this Monday wouldn't be his last. He would lose himself to the elixir that pushed through his body and awakened to a new day. After all, tomorrow couldn't be any worse than today. His name is Courtney Rubel, and he will live to see another day, because I haven't chosen now to be his time. His time will come eventually, but for now, I need him. And if you need to know who I am, for now you can call me the man in the red suit. I have many things for him to do. One second. Continue. Introductions. Prying himself up off the floor, his head flooded with a heavy throbbing pain. His mouth and throat felt raw, and he knew that all he needed was a drink, maybe a cup of coffee. He could almost smell the hot metal of his coffee maker brewing away. He used his hands and shoulder to guide him along the wall into the kitchen. For a moment, he stopped and gazed in a confused haze. His coffee pot was full of steaming dark roast, and he strained to remember if he had set the timer yesterday. He couldn't recall it, but it was possible. Yesterday was such a blur of motion and fading pictures. He walked slowly to the pot and stopped as he neared what should have been a counter covered in dishes and mess. There wasn't a single dirty bowl or cup. The kitchen was clean and the sink was empty. Had he been that high? Did he get up and clean the kitchen only to return to the bathroom and fall asleep in a pool of vomit again? No, it didn't make any sense. He opened his cupboard and pulled out one of the old clay-colored mugs. He took careful steps and motions as he poured out a cup of coffee. It didn't smell burnt, so it can't be very old. It was pretty hot, too. With as much care as he could manage, he migrated to the living room and knelt down in front of the ashtray. His hands pawed out amongst the butts, looking for one with enough bite left in it to burn his lungs. "Can I offer you a cigarette not yet smoked?" I asked him, knowing that he wouldn't expect to hear anyone's voice in here, his home. At first he paused and looked at the television, and then craned his head around to see me right behind him. "How the hell did you—" He asked me with all the confusion of a man who tried to understand how a person could be right next to them when they thought they were all alone. "Hell has nothing to do with a cigarette. So would you like one?" I asked him as sincerely as I could manage. He nodded and reached up to take the tiny gift from my hand. His eyes focused on me, and he got his first look at Destiny. A tall, well-groomed stranger wearing a deep scarlet three-piece suit and a black tie. His eyes wandered across my black wingtip shoes and my fingers covered in modest silver rings. A glance shot up to see black eyes, soft gray skin, and raven hair slicked back as men had done in years long gone. I know he saw more than a man, because I wanted him to. "Thank you," he said meekly as he put the cigarette in his lips. He began to search himself for a lighter when I struck the flint on a silver flip-top. He leaned forward, placing the end of his distraction into the flame, and then pulled hard as to get as much smoke as he could into himself. I couldn't help but smile slightly at him. He's so innocent in his naivety. "Better?" I asked mockingly. "Much. Did you make coffee?" He asked in a strange, buddy-buddy way. "Yes, Courtney. I believe you could use the medicinal benefits of caffeine." He stared at me briefly and then turned his eyes down to the coffee cup, as if it held some secret that would answer his deeper questions. With little thought, he drank from the cup and took another drag of the cigarette. "How do you know my name, and how did you get in?" When he asked, there was a hint of anger in his voice. When I heard it, I couldn't help but smile. I crouched down to look at him, eye to eye. "I know everything about you, Courtney. It doesn't matter how I know. And to be blunt, you don't lock your balcony door." I answered him with some delight. "This is the 5th fucking floor. How the hell did you get to my balcony?" Now he was getting more angry and confused. "I think we have more important business, Courtney. After all, you are a man who has just cheated death. I thought you of all people would be willing to be more adventurous in life and listen to what I have come for, and if nothing else, show some courtesy and say thank you for the coffee and cigarette." I masked my disdain for him with some mild humor. He looked at me, searching for some weakness in my facade, and took another long drag on his cigarette. "So who would I say thank you to?" he asked a bit harshly. Again, he brought a smile to my face, and I couldn't help but start to grow fond of his ignorance. "My name is of no consequence, but what you can call me is friend," I said, and waited patiently for his next question or comment. His manner and whole set of curious character defects served my purpose as well. "Thank you, friend. Why are you here?" he asked. "I've come to give a dying man the chance to live, and all I ask in return is your assistance," I said in a sweet tone. He drank from his coffee cup again and finished off the cigarette, pushing its remains into the overburdened ashtray. "What do you mean dying?" he asked in a weak voice. I pulled another cigarette out of my pocket and placed it between his lips. A quick strike of the flint, and soon the tip began to glow as he breathed in another cancerous breath. "Courtney, my friend, as of last night, your name went on the naughty list. You tried to some small success to end your life. If it wasn't for my generous spirit, you would be a bloated bath toy right now." I tried not to smile as I spoke. His eyes grew slightly watery as if he could weep, but I had no time for that. A soft swallow and another deep puff on his cigarette, and he lowered his eyes to the floor. Am I dead?" he asked with such hesitation. "Not quite, Courtney." I'm going to stop here for now, actually. I'm going to stick in there. You can see, Amber came in. I don't know if she's still here because things are broken, and it says there's 2 people watching. But if you're still watching, Amber, hello, and thank you for coming and watching me read for a bit. I will do this again at some point soon and carry on with Without the Light, and I will also read other things from Acolyte, and it's been a whole lot of fun. So thank you for coming and watching, and thank you for listening. And I have a button somewhere that I have to find that I can hit to stop, but I will find that in just 1 second. So thank you so very much for watching and listening, and pardon me, and please feel free to share, because I think these actually stay up for a while. I love you too, Rhiannon. So yeah, so feel free to share this, and I think these things stay up for a bit, and I don't know how that works. So if it is still up, and then you see this at some later point, please feel free to share it. Thank you. Bye. I think this is the finish button. I'm going to find out.